Hey everyone, we are back. Just getting the YouTube stream started as well. Okay, it seems to be live. All right, so the first two classes that we had were more on the lecture, more like a lecture. Just kind of giving the groundwork and the essential things that you kind of need to know. Over the next 3 days, next 3 classes, I'm going to be doing a little more tutorial based, a little more hands-on. One of those things that you can follow along to. I'm going to try and keep the pace slower, but I also recommend, maybe don't follow along now, like follow along, but not live, because you can always go back and watch the YouTube video. That way you can kind of pause and play as you want, but kind of do whatever you want. It's up to you. So I'm not going to show any slides today because I just kind of want to be more hands-on and good to go. So yeah, we're just going to get to it, and I'm going to literally start from scratch, as if all I have is a more or less a fresh computer. I already have a browser installed because I know you guys have at least one browser installed. But I'm going to install VS Code and literally just start something fresh. Something else that I haven't really done on these streams yet is introduce myself. My name is Tyler Savory. I have a lot of experience in programming, which is why I thought it would be good to kind of share my knowledge as best as I can, get people interested. Aside from just kind of picking it up when I was really young and learning on my own, I've had a company for the past 10 years that we do a lot of things called the Young Astronauts, but I specifically spend a lot of my time coding things with websites, apps, games a little bit, everything on the front end and the back end. So I've kind of touched a lot of those things, and I feel like I have a pretty good sense, especially in web, how to make things for the internet. So there's my little intro. Yay. So yeah, we're just gonna get right to it. And just as I kind of mentioned a moment ago, like I'm gonna try and go at a bit of a slower pace because it's gonna be a little more hands-on. Feel free to try and follow along. But if you notice you're kind of getting caught up and you're not really like paying attention then to the next step, maybe just sit here, try and take it in, because you can always rewatch the YouTube video sometime later and kind of play and pause at your own pace. So yeah, I'll let you do what you want. Also the chat, I noticed, I was getting some questions in there over the last couple of days, and I'm going to try and pay more attention, but please, if you could, there's an option to chat to everyone in the meeting instead of all panelists. If you could use that, that'd be great, because then some people might have the exact same question as you, and it would save time for everyone, and we can have a bit more of a conversation that way. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to share my screen, and that's not the right option. Share screen, and we're going to pick this screen. And get rid of that. So here's my computer screen. As you can see, there's nothing here. So we're starting from scratch here. All right, let's get to it. So today we are going to start, and this will be kind of like over the course of 3 days, and we're just going to build a little website. I kind of have some ideas for it, but to be honest, we're going to be kind of making it up as we go, which is really fun. But yeah, we're going to start right from scratch. So I'm going to open my favorite browser, Chrome. Boom, there it is. And we're gonna Google something. We're gonna Google VS Code, all one word. I'm sure you can get to it. I'm sure if you accidentally put a space, it's still gonna come up. So no stress here. I'm gonna click on the link that says download Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna choose my operating system. Many of you are probably on a Mac according to that poll, but you can of course choose Windows if you are, or Linux. I'm going here and I'm just going to wait a minute. And there it is. I download it to my downloads folder. I'll wait, I'll give it a second because some people's internet might not be as fast. And I am just going to click this, show in Finder, or however you get to your downloads. And I'm going to open it up. Oops, sorry. I closed that prompt too active. So on a Mac, at least, it kind of like just opens up the zip file as an app. And because I downloaded this yesterday as well, I'm going to pretend that this was the one I just downloaded. But if you're downloading for the first time, it should just be called Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio Code 2. That just got auto-named because I already had a file of that name. So on a Mac, at least, I'm going to drag it into my applications folder. And you shouldn't, unless you already have it installed, you shouldn't even see this option because there shouldn't be there, but I'm just going to click replace. It's a fully clean, updated version of it. And now if I go to my applications folder, I should see it there, Visual Studio Code. Now, if you are on Windows, it's in some ways even more straightforward. There's just a little walkthrough of the steps to install it, and then it will go in your start menu and probably your desktop. Okay, so I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to allow it. I am comfortable using it. Now, I had opened up a recent project of mine, so that won't happen for most people if it's fresh. Let me see if I can get it to just open it clean. There we go. So that's what should happen. You'll just get this. And I have text, and I'm just going to zoom this because of the size of my screen so people can see it a little better. Okay, that was pretty easy. Okay, so I opened it up, and what I want to do is kind of just first choose where I'm going to be working on this project. In programming in general, organization is very important. A lot of it is really just configuration and organization. So it's, you don't just want to put stuff saved to your desktop. You might delete a file you don't need. So I am going to go to and in my Tyler save redirectory, I'm going to make a new directory called, I'm just going to call it website. I'm going to call it websites. Make a folder for websites. And then inside this, I'm going to make another folder called website 1. So basically I'm in this and then websites and website 1. You can put this wherever. This is just what I've decided. And I'm going to make a new file. And I'm actually going to call it index.html. That's the go-to standard for your homepage. It's usually called an index. And servers essentially look for that file in their server to serve it when you just go right to a domain. So that's usually the principle, and that'll make more sense later. But I would say just call it index.html. And we will save. Then I'm going to open up this here. This essentially is my project explorer. And because this is a fully new project, I have to choose where the root of my project is. So I'm going to click open folder. And it automatically remembered where I was. But essentially, yeah, we want to pick this, the website 1 folder, not the file, but the folder itself. So just don't have that selected. Just pick this. Boom. It's going to kind of do a little bit of refresh. And now you'll see inside website 1, this is going to be like where all of our files live. So it's kind of just like a sidebar that shows what the equivalent of like your file explorer for that directory. All right. So I will open up this file. And I'm going to quit my Slack because it's making noises to me, which is distracting. Okay, so I have an index.html. And what I'm actually going to do first, just to kind of get things all open, is I'm going to right click on my index.html, and I'm going to go reveal in Finder. This on Windows will say reveal in Explorer. And see it here. And I can just open this file in my browser. And there it is. I'm going to just put this on this side of the screen, and I'm going to put this on this side of the screen. And I'm just going to close this guy here because we don't really need it open right now. All right. So here I've opened my file in the browser, and it's just blank, as you would expect, because we haven't done anything. And even if I view the source of it, even if you view the source, it's empty. And that's because it's empty. Let's close that guy. And we're going to write a little bit of HTML. We've done this a few times now. So I'm going to start by opening with an HTML tag. I'm going to put a head in, so HEAD. And you'll notice in VS Code, it kind of auto-completes your closing tags, which is super helpful. And I'm going to go to another line and actually open up a body tag, BODY. There we go. Inside my head, so just clicking here and making a nice space, I'm going to make a title. And I'm going to put inside that my website. I'm going to save. And I'm going to go back here. I haven't refreshed yet. You might be able to see that it says index.html, and that's because I never gave my page a title on the first version. But as soon as I save, there we go, my website. So that's what that title is used for, what shows up in your tab, and it's also what Google will show on a search result when your website's live. So that's all we need right now for our head. That's fine. Let's go into the body and let's create some stuff. So again, the body is where the content of your site is. So if I was just to write some text, I would see that text there as expected. Okay, now my web page has a few things that we need to put into it. A lot of the time, the top of your website will have things like a nav bar. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to create a div. So divs are like containers, they're rectangles, they're used for putting content in different places. And inside here, I'm first going to put an H1. Okay. Now, an H1 is your heading level 1. Usually on your web page, you only get per web page, you only have one, and it's generally like your not necessarily the web page's title, but the whole website's title. So we'll just make this say my website. And yeah, if we refresh here, we see my website. The div itself, it's not really rendered in a visual sense, but if we were to right click here and inspect, and let me just, by default, this is usually at the bottom, we can kind of see that, okay, there's a div and there's an H1. And the div itself is basically taking up the full width of the page. And then the H1 is within that div. Can I zoom this? Yeah, I can. This will be helpful. So for those of you using Chrome, that's really all you have to do, right click and inspect. Firefox, I believe, is the exact same. Safari is the same, but there's kind of a restriction that you have to enable first. So I'll just show that because inspecting is super helpful. And ignore what I'm doing right now. I'm going to turn this to its default mode just so I can show you. Okay. So if I go to a web page, and I can copy this and open it in Safari, no problem. Oh, that's weird. So I've opened in Safari, we're cool. And if I try to right click, I don't have that option. I don't have the inspect. I can, save the page and reload it, but there's nothing really happening here. And that's just because Apple likes to kind of keep some of this stuff hidden away from the average user so they don't get confused. So in order to enable that, you would go to Safari Preferences, and it would probably open in here, but you go to Advanced, and then Show Develop Menu in Menu Bar. And now, when I right click, I actually have that Inspect Element option, which then allows me to do exactly what we were doing. Inspect Element, and I can see all that stuff. I'm going to continue to use Chrome, but hopefully that helps those who have Safari by default to be able to use the inspector. So again, Safari, Preferences, Advanced, Show Develop Menu in Menu Bar. And yeah, I'm going to close this guy now. Oopsie. Okay. And anyone, yeah, if anyone in the chat feels like we are going too fast, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue at this pace. Okay, so I have my website. And oh, you know what I'm going to do? Because I have a plan for this div. This div, I'm planning on it being a header. So I'm going to give it a class. We talked about classes. They're just ways to kind of like target things. So I'm going to give it a class of header. And I am going to refresh, and there's no change. But if I did inspect, I'd see, yeah, it has that class. So that's going to give me the option to do something with it later. Yeah, so we have the H1. We're going to also, after this, put in some links. So links are an A tag, and the first attribute we want is href. And I am going to make actually the href for this index.html, which is the name of my thing, because I plan on making this say home. And essentially this would be a link to go home. Now, because we're already on the home page, it's going to render that. It's just going to keep reloading, but you'll see it's kind of quickly reloading. I might also have some other links. Maybe I have an about page, and I'm going to call this about.html. And we'll click that, and there's my about. Now, if I was to click about right now, it's going to throw me an error because we haven't made that page yet, but you know, it's there for the future when we're ready. And let's make a page called gallery, gallery.html. So one thing that's nice in VS Code with copying, of course you can, you know, like any program, just go like this and copy. So Command C and enter Command V. But if you don't have text highlighted, whatever line you are on, if you go Command C, which is the same as going edit copy, and then go down here and do Command V or edit paste, it copies and pastes that whole line. So saves a lot of time than trying to use your mouse and do stuff. So I made that, and let's make one more called contact. We might revisit this later and make more links or change them, but I think that's a pretty good start. My website, home, about, gallery, contact. And of course, feel free to name your website anything. What we're kind of making, I think, is like a personal website. So it makes sense to do it for something like your name, you know, Tyler's website. In fact, that's a great idea. Tyler's website. And I'm going to change it in my title as well, because I want the browser to say that. Great. Okay, so we have what we're calling our header. What we want to do, oh, we have something in the chat to all attendees. My website opens blank. Okay, if there's a way to, if your website is opening blank, there's a good chance that maybe the HTML tag is not open properly. Like I'm gonna try and do some stuff to try and make my website blank. I'm gonna just set this back to some defaults, and still seems. So in terms of saving, you pretty much have to always save if you want to change. If you're editing the text, like you might write, you know, a bunch of stuff. If you don't do, and I know I probably do it pretty quickly, I have my home key is literally Command S because I'm always saving. In VS Code, if there's like this circle icon here, it means you have unsaved changes. And when you save, it just goes to the default X. So make sure you're saving. And I'm going to try a couple other things just to try and replicate this. No. The blank website. No. Yeah, it's possible maybe you didn't actually save. I don't want to move on until this is sorted out. So can we get a confirmation either that you still can't see your website or that you are seeing it? Okay, we will just move on. The other thing I would try, open up this guy here and right click on this guy, reveal in Finder, and then just like right click and go open in Chrome, because maybe you don't have the right file open. So yeah, just assuming your HTML doesn't have major errors, yeah, the best thing to try, click here, go like this, reveal in Finder to make sure that you in fact have that correct one open, and then double click it, and there you go. And this should follow the path, you know, of your directory. Okay, I'm going to move on and hope that that gets sorted out. Okay, so rather than me focusing on building out all the content of this, we're going to kind of do this in pieces. So we have a header. It doesn't look pretty yet, but let's make it pretty. So the next step, I am going to open this guy again, and I'll see that right underneath my index.html, there's all this empty space, and I can right click on that empty space and go new file. And I'm going to type in style.css. So this is going to be my CSS file that I use. And what I'm going to do is split it. Now, generally, I would split to the right. So split right like this. But because I'm kind of like sharing my screen at a big zoom, it's not really the best for me in this case. So I'm actually going to right click this and split down. So this will allow me to see two different files at the same time. And this is kind of perfect because I don't have a lot of HTML yet. Okay, so now that I have a CSS file, I'm going to go into my head and I am going to create a link tag. And this is a way for me to link everything like a CSS file. So, and I'm going to give it I'm going to give it a source of style.css. And there's some other parameters we could put in, but it usually will just work just like this. So style.css, and then just to test this, I'm going to, in my CSS file, go body space background dash color red. And now I know it did not work. So something is wrong here. So I probably messed this up because I always forget what this is. I think it might be href actually. Nope, maybe I do need the other parameters. Bear with me for a sec. Text/CSS. Oh, I do need one more thing. I have to tell it it's a style sheet. So I go rel equals style sheet. I'll move this a little so we can see the whole thing. There we go. So me by writing link rel equals style sheet, href equals style.css, and type text/css allows me to include this file. And by making the body background red, I can test that, yes, of course it's working. I'm just going to play around with some stuff. So that parameter for type equals text/css, it's required by like the HTML standard, but browsers don't require it. As long as you have these two things, you're fine. So I'll keep it in there because it is more proper. So as a review, I made a new file called style.css, and I did that just by going new file, and typing in style.css. I opened it and added this little test thing here, which will not actually be what we do. And then I added this one tag inside my head underneath the title. Link rel equals style sheet, href equals style.css, and type is text/CSS. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to potentially catch up there. All right. I am going to completely remove this now because it was really just a way to make sure that the style is being included. One of the best ways to do it is just make something red. All right. So the first thing I want to deal with is I actually do want to, I want to start by styling my header. So because of the class, I start with a dot and I write the name of the class, header. And then I make a curly brace, not a bracket, these are brackets, not a parentheses, those are parentheses, but a brace, and that's a brace. It's the little curly one. I'm sure there's some emojis that use that, and it's good. So header, let's give this a background color. And I'm going to find a good color here. So what's my best way to find a color? Let's open up Google and look for, I'm going to search for a site called, I think it's called Coolers. Is that what it is? Yeah, Adobe Cooler. So I'm going to open up this site. Oh, this is different than I remember. And I'm going to go to Explore. This is just a way to get colors pretty easily. And I'm going to cancel that. I'm not sure because everything's changed. But yeah, as you scroll, you kind of find some different things. And I'm going to just look for some colors that I think are kind of nice. Yeah, I'm digging these. So I'm going to click on these. And I'm just going to keep this open just to have it as a reference. But what they're giving us here is hexadecimal codes. So there's some colors here that I think are nice. And I can just click copy on this, say I want this for my header color, and go back to my code and just go edit paste or Command V. And remember a semicolon. Now, if I go back to my website, I should see, oh, look, my header is in this really nice purple color. It's looking good. So that's good. So as a reminder, so background dash color, you always do the colon after you name the property, and then generally a space. So VS Code automatically kind of shows you the color. This isn't really like text that is in my document. I can't do anything with it. It's just kind of showing up. But your hex code needs to start with the number sign, and then it's always 6 characters, mostly always 6 characters. All right, so we have a background color. Now I feel a couple things are happening here. First of all, my text is like really touching the edge of this thing here, which doesn't look ideal. And also there's sort of this white space. So we're going to deal with both of those. The reason for this padding issue here of the text touching right to the purple is we want to give this header some padding. So I'm just going to type a padding of, let's just choose like 8 pixels and see how it looks. Cool. It's definitely better, but there's a ton of like weird height here. I wonder what's going on there. And I'm going to figure it out by inspecting this. And I'm going to see that, oh, the H1, see how there's that like orange on top and bottom? That's because H1s, the browser by default, puts some margin. It's putting, if I go over here and see the computed, it's actually putting about 21 pixels of margin on the top and on the bottom. So, I could, start to fight with that and, figure out what the defaults are. I could easily just go margin. Sorry, I can't do that. So it's the H3 that's having an issue. So I could go dot header and then space H3 to say it's an H1. So this is basically saying any header, any H1s in a header, I can choose here and go margin 0. That is an option. And then it looks a little bit nicer now. But something I would like to do first, so that we're not dealing on and off with like, oh, there's this thing that I have to override, is something we talked about yesterday, which is called a CSS reset. So we're going to use Eric Meyer's, which is just a very basic reset. It completely levels the playing field for everything. So to do that, I'm just going to search for CSS reset on Google. And look, he's the first response. It's already purple. I've been there. It's the one on Meyer Web. And everything in this orange box, I'm going to copy. And rather than pasting it right into here, because I don't want to have to keep looking at this ugly looking code and scrolling, I'm going to open back up my project viewer. And I'm going to make another new file. And I'm going to call this one reset.css. So I have my reset. When you make a new file, VS Code automatically opens it, but I could, of course, just click it to open it. And I'm going to paste that in here. And I'm going to save. And VS Code, depending on what plugins are on, will kind of automatically format it. But we should once this is saved, we should never even have to open this file again. It just lives there. So the only other thing we have to do is, I'm going to close this again, just because I don't have as much room. Maybe I'll zoom out one. I'm going to copy this line that we already had, and I'm going to paste above it and change this one to reset. So now we have two style sheets being included, reset.css and style.css. The reason you need to include the reset first is because it essentially resets everything. If you were to write all your own styles and then include the reset, everything in CSS gets parsed in order that you include it. So you'd essentially be writing all this CSS and then the reset would just be like, no, not doing that. So make sure your reset is included first. Now, if I refresh this, we're going to see it's going to look wildly different. Wildly different. So, and let me just show the differences here. So I'm going to delete this line. So one thing is my browser is saying H1s are supposed to be bold and like a size, let's say 28 font. Also, it's putting padding on the body itself, as well as probably some margin. And you'll see links are blue, visited links are purple. There's probably a few other things going on. But as soon as I include this, and I can do that just by going, I can get that back by going edit undo. We kind of see, oh, that white border is gone now. Oh, there's no, it's an H1, but it just looks like normal text. Oh, the links are still blue. Okay, but the font size is kind of the same. Good. And the only reason there is actually this sort of like nice padding here is because we added that. So if I actually got rid of this padding line here, we'd see everything's going to be pretty smushed up, basically right against each other. So let me show that again. Without the reset, it looks like that. With the reset, it looks like that. It's hard to say which looks better, but the real purpose here is that we've leveled the playing field and we don't have to worry about like what browsers are automatically doing to H1s and the body and stuff. We control that from scratch and we don't have to override, because we already have with the reset. Okay, so it's back. I'm going to get rid of this line because that was just to demonstrate a purpose. We may put it back in a minute. So we have our header, and I'll put this padding back in of 8 pixels to make it nice. There we go. Okay. Now, what I want to do is put that line back in. Hopefully you didn't delete it if you even had it. So header, dot header, and then I have a space, and then I want to target my H1. So I'm going to do that and kind of go, I'm going to give it a font size of 24 pixels. And the CVS code auto-completes a lot of things for you in CSS. So I give that 24 pixels. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to give it a font weight of bold. Oh, did I not save? What's happening? What is going on? Font weight of bold. Was this already bold? Okay, wait, something weird is happening. My computer is chugging right now. I don't know what is going on. It probably has something to do with that I'm live streaming something. Let me see what's going on. Okay, there we go. I don't know, that something happened. When things happen, just turn it off and on again. So yeah, we have Tyler's website, nice and bold. I'm gonna go back to my colors because I think there might be a color maybe that looks good here. Although these colors are pretty similar, it might not be readable. So we'll try something else. I'm gonna give it a color of white. That doesn't really look that good either. I'm really good with colors. We'll just keep it black for now, but feel free to pick a different color because you might have picked a totally different color palette than me. So we'll keep it like that. Maybe we'll try one more thing. So we're using this. Let's see how this color looks. So I'm gonna go color and paste that guy in. Not really readable. Let's try this dark one. I feel like this dark one will be good. Okay, this is better. It's not ideal. We could play around with that for days, but I'm not gonna get stuck on it. So we have that. Now, I kind of feel like my title should be right in the center of the page. So we can do that by going, I don't think we've seen this one before, but text align, center. And now it's in the center. Seeing this now, I feel like my font size could probably be 32. Of course, feel free to play with whatever you want. You don't have to copy this verbatim. Okay, and yeah, it's using serif font, whatever my system default serif font is, but I want a better font. Of course, we could go and download fonts and convert them to web fonts, all that, but that's beyond today's lesson. So I'm actually just going to go font family, and just to be super safe, I'm going to type sans serif. So there's essentially like 3 kinds of fonts. You have serif fonts, which are the ones like this that have the kind of like doohickeys. There's sans serif, which is ones without the doohickeys. And then there's monospace, and I can kind of show you all 3. So that's my sans serif font, which is probably on a Mac Helvetica or like San Francisco or something. Anyways, it's just using like my system sans serif font. If I did do serif, it's going to go back to what it was before, which is like this one. And the other one is I can use, actually, sorry, there might be, there's monospace. So monospace is like a font like Courier. It's basically where each letter, even like this, is the same width. I love monospace fonts. In fact, usually when you code, and this font in my default font in my editor is also a monospace font, because characters always just line up nicely. And you know what? I like that. I like the monospace font. We're going to keep it. Now, a lot of times monospace fonts don't even have a weight to them. I think if I turn this off, oh, okay, this one does. This one does. It's probably like Courier New. So there I have my nice thing, Tyler's website. Great. Okay, I think that's good for my logo, as we'll call it. Now we're going to style this little menu here. So I am going to go dot header space A. So all A tags in a header. I want to, again, let's do text align center. See, that didn't work. So let's try something else here. The reason that didn't work is because the links themselves are just kind of like these little guys. So for me to make these center, I actually need to put them in a container. So I'm going to make, in between my H1 and this, another div. And I'm going to go div class equals, and I'm going to call it actually menu. And it auto completes this, but I'm just going to erase that because it's easier for me to then just go all the way to the bottom here and go /div, and it auto completed it. Now, when you're making HTML, this kind of looks a little bit messy. Generally, the rule of thumb is you want things to kind of like be indented based on their parents. So because I added that after the case, VS Code didn't do it automatically for me. So I'm going to highlight this whole block here, and I'm going to push tab, the tab key, which will just tab that stuff all in. Now, refresh, no difference. Now you can, I could do this whole thing, and this works. Like your browser doesn't really care about tabs, but it makes this really complicated to see, oh, is this inside the menu? You kind of have to like really look it up. So let me undo that nasty change I did. And there we go. In fact, browsers pretty much ignore white space. Let me show you an example. I'm going to make it web space site. And of course, it thinks it's another word, but let's put a bunch of spaces here. Nothing changes. So HTML, and in fact, if I go to a whole new line like this, nothing's going to change. HTML ignores more than one white space. Anytime you have more than, it allows one because you need that to separate words, but after that, it doesn't care. And that's because you might want to, do things, you might want to lay out your tags. If this was a really long tag, you might decide, oh, I want to like put all these on separate lines. Don't actually do this. And whatever, it just allows you to be more flexible and lay out the code the way you want it. In the case that you did want multiple spaces, so let's go back to this, because that works. There are ways to do it. The most basic and original way is what's called an HTML entity. There's many HTML entity characters. I'll give you an example of one that's pretty famous. So I can do ampersand, copy, and semicolon, and you'll see it turn blue because it recognized it. And that actually makes a copyright character. There's also like one for trade, which is going to be the trademark. Cool. But one, and the one I was getting at, is what's called a non-breaking space. And its short form is NBSP, non-breaking space. And this doesn't get ignored. I can have a bunch of these, and basically every one is its own space. So it's kind of like putting an invisible character. And then that's exactly what it is, an invisible character. So that was a little side note just about HTML, that it basically ignores white space. Okay, where are we at? We still got another 20 minutes, so we can get some more done. Okay, now that I've put this in a class called menu, I can then target that menu. So I'm going to erase this again because it didn't work. And I'm going to go header, space, and I'm going to go dot menu. So I'm saying any class with the name menu inside a header, I want to style it a specific way. And here, I can actually do text align center. Like that. I'm going to try and show as much as I can. And if we refresh now, you'll see, oh, those links are centered. And that's simply because there's a container called menu, and it has an attribute called text align center. And these guys are like, okay, I'm going to center inside that. Awesome. Okay, something else, I feel like this kind of nudges too close to this. So what I'm going to do on the menu is actually give it a margin dash top of, let's say, 6 pixels. And we'll see that kind of adds some space. So basically what's happening here is the menu, that red line right there is representing those 6 pixels of space. And it's pushing it down. And that feels pretty good. We might adjust that as we make the menu links better. So let's do that. Let's make these menu links better. So dot header dot menu, I'm going to just copy and paste that because this is going to be a repetitive thing. And I want to style any A tags. So any A tags in a menu that are inside a header. We're cascading here, cascading style sheets. We want to do something to them. And for instance, I want to give it a color. And I think for my menu, we're going to give it a color of white. Looks good. So far, I also want to change the font size. Let's do like 18 pixels. Refresh. Looking better. I also don't like the font very much. Font family. Sans serif, looking better. I'm also not a huge fan, at least by default, of that underline. So there's a property we haven't talked about yet called text decoration. And that allows you to do things, that's basically targeting the underline effect. By default, anything, basically links have it set to underline, but we can change it to a few other things. I'm just going to change it to none. So text decoration none, and that will get rid of those lines. Awesome. So I think we could still make this look nicer. I mean, with my design sense, at least, it might look a bit nicer. I'm going to give these a background color. And I'm going to go back to my color picker that I had, and I'm going to copy this guy again. And we're going to copy that. And we're going to see, okay, now they're in this sort of nice box. It's not nice yet, but it's there. So that looks pretty good, but obviously everything's kind of crammed and touching. So we've dealt with this before, and we solved it with padding. So I'm going to give it a padding of, let's do 4 pixels, nothing too big. All right, looking pretty good. But we're seeing that this is now like touching this. So what we're actually going to do is make this margin top maybe 12 pixels. It's looking a bit better. Okay. So we got this. Now I kind of like how much padding there's on top, but I don't really like, I think there should be more on the left and right. So what we could do is a couple ways to do it. We could do padding top 4 pixels, padding bottom 4 pixels. So that's going to handle the top and bottom, obviously. And then we can go padding left. Let's double it, 8 pixels, and padding right, 8 pixels. Yep, this is looking a little bit nicer, more like buttons, which is kind of what I was going for. Now, that's pretty tedious to write out. So how can we make that better? And I'll show you. We talked about this before. So we can actually, for instance, just do padding, and we've done that. And we can do what's kind of called like the clock, I'm calling it. So we can put in 4 parameters all in this line with spaces between them, and it works like a clock. So the first one is top, and then it goes around in a circle clockwise. So top will be 4 pixels. We want the right to be 8 pixels, the bottom to be 4 pixels, and the right and the left to be 8 pixels. So you can think of it just going around like that. And if I actually erase these lines here, oops, and bring this guy back, it's going to be the exact same. So this is just a nice shorthand, way less to type and way less to do. Now, pro tip right now, and don't feel like you have to do this, whenever you have this sort of repeating pattern of like, okay, I have 4 and I have 8, I have 4 and I have 8, that's also kind of repetitive. And there is a shorthand where you can actually say, I could actually change this to 4 and 8. And basically what it means when there's 2 parameters, it's saying, okay, that's for the top and bottom, and that's for the left and right. So this is actually going to be the exact same. I'm still going to keep it like this because I don't want to like make things super confusing. So just think of it as a clock, but just so you know, there's a lot of times when there's a shorthand for something, there's also a super shorthand. Okay, so we got that stuff. Now I'd love it if these links kind of did something when you hovered. How can we deal with that? So this will be fun. So what I'm going to do is rewrite this exact same line, dot header, dot menu, A, and then this is a totally new thing. We never talked about this before. This is called a pseudo selector. So it is denoted with a colon, and I'm going to say hover. So basically what this means is anytime I'm hovering, and remember it's a colon here, oops, colon. Anytime I'm hovering a link that's inside a menu, that's inside a header, I want to do something to it. So in this case, I think I want to make its background color a little bit different. And let's do its background color as white. White. So if I refresh and go like this, you'll see, oh, it's white. Now that's a bit of a problem because you can't read what you're on. So what else can we do here? Oh, why don't we, when we hover, make its text color? Just color. And let's make it the color that the background was. So we're kind of like inverting these things essentially. Oops, number sign. So I just copied that hex code. So by default, it's like the background is purple and the color is white. But when we hover, we want the background to be white and the color to be purple. Beep, 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 beep. Nice, it's looking good. I want to show you something. So we could do other things here too. We could say like, let's make the font weight bold. And I'm going to tell you, don't ever do this. So it's a rule of thumb, never on a hover effect, you never want it to change the actual like structure of your document. You'll see what's happening when I'm hovering. Because I'm making it bold, it's actually making it wider. And then that is also making this thing push over. And that gets really annoying, especially when you get in that, there's this like little spot sometimes where like you're kind of hovering and you're kind of not, and it'll kind of like flash. Basically, like you want to avoid hover effects, you know, just do stuff with color. Don't do stuff that actually like moves things along because it does get annoying. Cool. So I'm just going to deal with that. All right. The one thing that could make this a little bit better, I would say, is if there was a little bit of a, it's kind of like instantaneous. I would love like a little bit of a transition between these. So what I can do is go back to this guy here when I'm talking about links. And I can say, I can give it a property called transition. And transition takes 3 parameters. Actually, we'll just talk about the first 2, the most important ones. So transition, I want to say, what do I want? What do I want to transition? And specifically, I want, let's transition the background color. So I would do background color like that. And then the second parameter is how long do I want that transition to be? I like to do something like 0.4 seconds. So that's how you write time in CSS, 0.4 s. And if I was to go back here and refresh, we actually see, oh, there's a little bit of transition happening here. Now, what's actually happening is the background is fading, but the text is happening instantaneously. So to combat that, what I could actually do is say, instead of background color, I can actually just type all here. Transition, all properties, 0.4 seconds. Boom, boom, boom. And that actually did a little thing because I'm telling it like, transition from something. So that's not usually, you don't usually want to use all. So I'm going to go back to how it is. And there is ways to, I can actually do background color 4 seconds, 0.4 seconds, and then say color 0. I can do like 1 second, just to like show the difference. So you can kind of chain them together. Nope, that's not how you do it. There is a way to do it. Oh, I think you have to put a comma. Yeah, I don't remember. We're just gonna move on. I think the background color looks great. We're just gonna transition like that. Cool. So we got some links. We got some stuff happening. Finally, I feel like that padding that we put on looks pretty good of the header, but I kind of feel like it needs more padding on the bottom. So another thing you do in CSS is I could say, and this is kind of like a shorthand. I could be like, okay, padding by default is 8 pixels. And that will mean that, padding top, right, left, and bottom is 8. But I can also then go padding 8, but then say padding bottom, 20 pixels. And that's a perfectly valid way to do things. Basically, you're setting it to all 4, but then you're specifically being like, but this one I mean 20. And I think that's good, but probably a little bit too much. Let's go like 16. Just want a little bit more space there. Cool. That's looking pretty good. I also feel like my header could use a little bit more love. And what we're going to do is give it a border just on the bottom. So border bottom. And this takes 3 parameters. First of all is the width, and I want it to be 2 pixels. The second is the color. Border bottom 2 pixels. Go back to my colors here, and I'm going to use maybe this one. So we haven't used this color yet. And where was I? Border bottom 2 pixels. I'm going to paste that in. And then a type of border. So solid is one example, and I'll show a few others. So I just added this thing here. It might not be that easy to see on the stream, so I'm going to make it even wider just to kind of denote it. So there's this little dark line here. So solid looks nice. I'm going to make it thinner, but I'm going to show it big right now to show the other things. We can use solid. You can use something called dotted, which kind of does these nice dots. Looks kind of cool. There's dashed. And yeah, VS Code will kind of like tell you options a lot of the time too when you start typing. In this case, yeah, solid. It helps auto completing. So yeah, we have this nice border here, and I'm going to go 2 pixels because I like that better. And yeah, I think we're looking pretty good here. So we're gonna yeah, we have a few minutes still. So I think we're happy with the header. Obviously, these links don't work yet. We will get to that another time, but we have them in there. They look kind of nice. I am good. What I want to do next for the next couple minutes is start working on the other part of the web page, just the content of it at least. So after our header, and the header closes with that guy, we are going to have some text. So I'm going to make a p tag. And in here, you would write, maybe you're just writing like, welcome, maybe you're writing, welcome to my web page. Please, blah, blah, blah. And you might write a bunch of text. I have a shortcut just to make lorem ipsum text, just so I don't have to spend time. And I'm going to save that and refresh. And there, it's there. It looks okay. Obviously, there's some stuff we could do to it, but let's do that in a moment because I think it's important to have an image on our homepage. So I'm going to give this an image. So image src, and this one auto closes or self closes. We've seen it many times. Image src, and I'm going to go to that site again that we love called Place Kitten, and find a Place Kitten. And I'm going to copy one of these. Yeah, let's copy this guy, and I'm going to open it up just to see what it looks like. I'm thinking I want more a wide image, and of course you can, you'll be able to find any image that you wish. And in the next class, we're going to look at right now. I'm just keeping it easy, and it's like a remote image that we can hot link, but we're going to look into actually using your own images, probably right off the top of next class. But on this site, I can go, you know what, I want something that's like, just by changing the URL up here, the first parameter is the width, and the second is the height. I can get something a little bit wider. That one's funny. Let's make it a bit taller until we find one that's good. This one's a bit better. Still don't love it though. Okay, there we go. There's our picture. So I can copy this, and I can go into my source tag that I was making and just paste it right in. And I can go back here, and there we go. So I'm going to leave it off there because I think it's a good spot. We got the header done. We got a tiny bit of content that we're going to come back to and style to get our web page looking a bit nicer starting tomorrow at the same time. So I'm going to leave it there. If there's any questions, please throw them in the chat right now because it'd be a good time because I got a couple minutes to answer. If not, I'll just do a quick review of this HTML. So throw it in now or forever hold your peace. In the case that you were trying to follow along, but you felt you messed something up, of course, there's a YouTube version of this, which I will try and find right now. It's live right now, but it will be going. How do I find this YouTube video? Oh, you know what? Probably in copy streaming link. Here we go. The streaming link has been copied. So I'm going to, in the chat right now, just put this link here, just in case you want to rewatch it once it finishes to kind of follow along better. But yeah, that's basically the class. So as a very quick review of 2 minutes, I'm going to just close the CSS file for a minute, just so we can kind of see the whole thing. So we made an HTML document. We saved it as index.html. We put the very basic structure, which is HTML and head, and put a title. And we linked to 2 different style sheets, that reset, which levels a playing field, and our actual style sheet that we're writing styles in. We also made a header, this container here, which we did some nice stuff with. We put our H1, our name of our website, and this menu with a few links. And we just started doing this, which we'll be adjusting and making better next. In that style sheet, we did a few things. There's not too much going on here. We styled the header with the background color, a bit of padding. We styled our H1. We styled the menu itself to allow the links to be centered. And we styled the links. And then probably the coolest thing we did was adding this hover effect and this transition so that things look fun and nice. All right, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there. And thanks for joining. And yeah, we're going to continue this off same time. 2 p.m. EST, 11 a.m. PST tomorrow. We'll continue right where we left off with, very tiny review, just so that we can get moving. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Have a nice day. There's me full screen. I just got to remember how to leave all these things. All right, bye.